Welcome! You are listening to Beneath the Surface podcast with your host, Carter Russell.
Today, Carter had the privilege to sit down with Jeremie Lotemo. Jeremie is a transformational coach, specializing in relationships and emotional intelligence. Jeremie helps people examine and release the beliefs that continue to influence them on an unconscious level. This episode starts with Jeremie discussing his hero's journey into the work he does today, outlining the pain that gave birth to the insights and perspectives that he teaches to others. Carter and Jeremie then discuss the power of taking responsibility, the most common struggles he helps men through, mother wounds and how that can impact individuals, what most people get wrong about masculine and feminine polarity, relationship advice for both men and women, porn addiction, high value men, and much more. As always, this podcast finishes off with a rapid fire round. Jeremie's perspective on these topics is truly unique. Carter really enjoyed this conversation, and he knows you will too.
Jeremie, welcome to Beneath the Surface podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Carter. Happy to be here with you today.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I came across your Instagram probably a few weeks ago, and I've loved watching the content you've been putting out there, talking about all those hot topics, and just your perspective on it, the way you word it, the way you look at things. It's such a unique lens. And as soon as I saw, I think it was like 3 posts, I was like, I want to have this guy on the podcast. I've got so many things I want to ask him already. So yeah, really, really happy to have you here. As you know, we start off with the hero's journey, and yeah, you've got quite a cool story, quite an interesting story. So if you would like, take me back to your early days, where you grew up, and tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. So I was originally born in Congo, Kinshasa to be exact. It is the capital of Congo. So at the time that I was born, there is a genocide that's still occurring now. And that just wasn't a conducive environment for raising children or having a family. And my mother is Rwandese, so there was also a genocide happening around the same time I was born with the Rwandese people. There's been a documentary made about it, Hotel Rwanda. So all of this was happening at the time I was born, so it just wasn't like the best environment. So around when I was 4 or 5, we moved to the States and Portland, Oregon to be exact. And so from Portland, we transitioned to Virginia. From Virginia, we transitioned to Atlanta. So that's where I spent most of my time. But even through that, we still moved around a lot. And so the reason this is important around my journey and some of the things that I'm doing now is because throughout all of these experiences of like, let's say, physical instability of constantly moving, not knowing if I'm going to be in this city or going to be going to this school for the next year, or this group of friends, I'm possibly never going to see them again because I'm going to move to a different state. All of this developed something in me, which I would call a very refined flight response. So this ability to just, me and my brothers would joke about it, like how we would see our friendships and our relationships with other people and like kind of look at the alarm and like at some point this thing is going to collapse or fall apart. But that was really just due to our experience of constantly shifting and moving and not really able to put like 10 toes down in a space and like know that that space is going to be stable, it's going to be there. So at a very young age, I got really in touch with the, I would say, the impermanence of connections and relationships and emotions and experiences, like very quickly, to the point where my body just adapted to it. So as I got older as an adult, this helped me and kept me safe in a lot of ways because I'm like, well, this person is not going to be here tomorrow. everything is fleeting, this too will go. Like these are things I was repeating to myself at the age of like 15. But what I started to realize was as I got older and stepped out the house and started to live my life as an adult, this refined flight response kept me safe for a while, but it started to keep me stuck in my life. And so some of the ways that it kept me stuck was I had really terrible commitment issues. I couldn't keep a job for no longer than 6 months. I also couldn't maintain a relationship for 6 months. And I used to assume that the person was the problem, but I was the common denominator within each of these relationships that were ending within the span of 6 months. And that also created a lot of financial instability in my life and a lot of spaces that I would explore in terms of my career path, but somehow be pulled to do something else and explore something else. So this was really, really hard for me to navigate because I had the language I'm communicating right now was a language I didn't have. I
Mm,
just didn't know why I was doing it. I didn't understand why these things were happening, why I felt called to just suddenly quit a job or leave a relationship. I didn't know why I was doing it. So what started to essentially have what contributed to this turning point was a rock bottom that I hit.
mm,
This was like a challenging point in my life where all of these things that I was running away from, my responsibilities, my commitments, my responsibility to take uh, responsibility for my finances, my dreams, my goals, my gifts, like all of the avoidance patterns that I was embodying finally came knocking at my door. Well, they've been knocking for a while, but they just busted the door right open.
mm,
And that led me to this really, really rock bottom point that I would say was like my lowest point in my life,
mm,
my early 20s. And I was living from my car. I didn't have any stable income at all. And I was deeply reliant on my mother to essentially rescue me out of my own situation that was essentially the byproduct of my own choices, right? So that was something that really brought me to a point where I had to ask myself some really uncomfortable questions and really start to take responsibility for my choices instead of blaming mom or dad or life or like these were choices that I made. These were
mm,
things that I chose to do. And that was very uncomfortable, but it was very liberating at that time of my life because I would say at that point in my life was the first time that I stopped really playing the victim in my life. I feel like I had validated the victim mentality for so long. The part of me that was truly victimized by my experiences. And I
mm,
felt like, okay, it's time. We've exhausted this part of ourselves. Now it's time to embody the responsibility that comes with uh, living a full life, right? And embracing your dreams and uh, pursuing your dreams. So that led me to really, really take responsibility for a lot of different things. But it started with uh, trying to create some sense of stability in my life. So I started to acquire a bunch of different skill sets. So I was a graphic designer, developed skill sets within the marketing, branding world, and social media management, all of these things. And I started to uh, work with brands, agencies, and entered into this position at this agency in Atlanta that was growing really fast, and I was an account manager. So I was flying out to places, being going to conferences, working with clients, working on big accounts, and I was like, all right, great, I'm doing it. Like I'm finally taking responsibility for my life. I had a car, I had a nice house, everything was clicking at this point in my life, and then the pandemic hit, and I was like, whoa, something internally also like turned for me, and it was, again, it felt like the same response. You got to leave all of this. It's time to go. That's
mm,
what happened. And I was like, wait, wait, wait. I'm just there. I just established some kind of stability here. And something internally was like, no, like it's time to put all of this away. There's something else you need to do, but it's going to require you to travel for some time. And so I leaned into that, and I stopped working at the agency and started to develop a clientele with people that I could work with and offer my services to my marketing and branding skill sets to help them elevate their business and to scale their business. And that allowed me to stay stable for some time, but I left everything, my house, my car, everything. And I went to Mexico for about 8 months, traveling throughout Mexico. And during that time, I hit this point where everything started to crumble again.
Mm.
And fast forward, I met some amazing teachers and guides and shamans in the mountains of Palenque, and they helped me integrate certain parts of myself that I had a hard time embracing. And it was really about dropping into my body, learning how to be in my body again, and learning how to embrace the responsibility that came with my power, which is something that I was felt like at that time of my life, I was being invited to dream bigger, was like the phrase or the theme that kept coming up. It was like, you're playing small. This is great, but you're still playing small. And it's time to dream bigger. It's time to like really allow yourself to step into what you're here to do. And being in Mexico, giving myself that time where I was away from everything really allowed me to fully receive that in the company of a community and teachers that I felt really held space for that integration. So fast forward after that experience, I came back to Atlanta. I self-published a poetry book. I started working with clients, but at the same time, I started dedicating myself to sharing my poetry, my thoughts, my insights on Instagram, and just opening myself up to the possibility, and essentially, of being seen, being seen in my gift, being seen in something that I felt was uh, important to me and something that I felt others needed to hear. And I just made that commitment to myself. It wasn't really attached to, I'm going to become this, or people are going to do this, or people are going to follow me. It's just, this is a commitment to myself. This is a commitment to a gift that I feel I've been given. And so I have a responsibility to that. And fast forward, that magnetized the community to the point where the things that I was doing in the marketing and branding world almost were completely drowned out by these new responsibilities that I came up with, coaching and working with men, and talking about relationships and doing workshops and master classes, and running these courses. So that's how I got here, and that's the short version. So thanks for asking, man.
Yeah, wow. What a journey. What a journey. I like all the traveling that you've done. Like you've moved from the Congo to America, and I see through your story, I see the importance of travel per se, and experiencing those different parts of life. There's a few things I want to touch on there. Actually, one of the first things though, because I feel like this is always the important, is that moment of that rock bottom. You said the first real rock bottom where you were living out of your car, and you said it had a bit of a victim pattern, which I see is quite common today, and it's quite a sad mindset to have. I empathize for people who are stuck in that mindset, because I do believe it's one of the most unfortunate mindsets you can be trapped in. um, how did you how did you realize, was there a specific thing that happened, or was it almost just like a drop in the head, that an aha moment? How did you realize that I can't keep living like this victim anymore? I need to take charge of my life, and I need to ultimately do these things to create the life that I want.
Yeah, great question. So for me, it happened through recognizing how my actions were impacting others. So I realized for myself, like, my life is not just my own. My life, the choices I make, the things that I do actually have real life consequences in my life, but they also directly affect the people around me, the people that care about me, or the people that I consider my friends, right? So that was a space that I invited myself to explore. It wasn't just me again here sitting and my life is my own. Who gives a shit what I do? Or like, I don't care. That I had to grow out of that mentality, and really, it was a subtle shift. It happened over time, but it was through my mother. So, as I shared earlier, I was heavily reliant on her to rescue me out of essentially the shit that I put myself through, right? The situation I put myself in. And in that victim mentality, I'm not really concerned with how she's experiencing it. On some level, I believe she deserves, or I deserve to have her come rescue me, because the reason I've developed this trauma responses is because the way she raised me, right? So there's a part of me that felt justified in this, that felt angry, that felt resentful, and sabotaged my life as a way to get back at her in a way, right? So this is where I started to actually start to explore shadow work. This is around this time is when I got really curious about my own shadows and the parts of me that were enjoying this experience of being stuck, because mom gets to rescue me, and mom didn't let me be a little boy when I was a kid. I had to grow up and be an adult. And now I'm getting back at mom because now I get to be rescued and taken care of the way I wanted to be when I was 9 or 10. And so
Mm.
it really required me to like explore this shadowy aspect of myself that was finding benefit, a hidden payoff in being stuck. And I was like, wow, I have a lot of compassion for this version of me. I understand his experience. I understand why he might feel he needs to be stuck in order to feel some level of love or support from the people around him. And at the same time, I deeply love my mother. And I also felt I f- it finally I finally allowed myself to feel the pain inside of my body when I didn't show up for myself, and how that affected my mom, how that required her to do these things, stretch a dollar to, you know, run and, from work to come check in on me or buy me groceries, or all of these things, her being in worry and anxiety of like, is he okay? Like, I finally allowed myself to feel into this space where her seeing me in that space was hurting her. And I
Mm.
could feel that. And that actually was my catalyst. I said, one of my dreams since I was a young boy was to always take care of my mother. And in that moment, it was a series of moments where I came back to that promise that I had made to myself. And I said, wow, Jeremiah, we have deeply drifted away from this promise, this commitment we made to ourselves. And how can we come back to that? How can we come back to the truth of who we are? Like, free from this resentment, free from this bitterness, this anger. And so the only solution I had was, well, I need to take responsibility for my life. I need
Mm.
to start getting shit done. I need to, you know, pick, like, start, chopping wood and carrying water and getting comfortable with that process. So that was really it. I feel like for some other people it might be something different, but I think feeling the pain of our choices and how they affect other people is a powerful catalyst to waking up out of a victim mentality.
Yeah, powerful, very powerful. I to add some practicality to that, would you mind sharing how you did shadow work? Because I see such an importance in that, and there's a few different ways, like journaling and getting mentors. But how did that look for you, doing the looking at the parts of yourself that you maybe weren't looking at or didn't want to look at, and were playing out in your life?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I found a couple different books and resources at that time of my life. So a lot of it was around Carl Jung's work around the shadow. But one book that was really a game changer is this book by Dr. Carolyn Elliott, called Existential Kink. So in this book, she's basically walking uh, people, readers, through the process of recognizing that in some way there is a payoff, the secret payoff that we get from being stuck in our lives. Situations that we hate, the bad things that happen in our lives, are experiences that are a part of us is finding a thrill in, actually getting off on it. So she even goes into exploring the pleasure that comes from being stuck. So that was a game changer. And I just developed different practices. One was the journaling practice, where I developed this 3-2-1 process for myself. That's been talked about. I think Ken Wilber is one that developed it. But the 3-2-1 process was more like an embodiment practice. So what I would do is speak about the experience that I was having, that I was frustrated about. Then I would speak to the experience as if it was in the room. And then the next thing I would do is be the experience. So, meaning I would actually be the shadow. So, the part of me that was angry, frustrated, it was like getting off on something, I would embody it. I was like, what would this shadow do? How would it feel? What would it embody? What would it say? How would it live through my body if my body was a vessel for this shadow to be free, to be untamed, to be completely unrestricted? So this was a practice that I would have when I would have these bad experiences, experiences that I didn't want, and it developed in a an intimacy and a conscious relationship with my shadows because I still have them, but I'm aware of them and I'm aware of their patterns and I'm aware of the triggers, the events that trigger their responses or their strategies or defense mechanisms. So um, those were two big things, and now it still comes back to embodiment is a big thing for me. Um, Embodiment practices to help me really drop into my body, but also the last thing I'll mention is just inner child work. There was a lot of reparenting that I had to do with, like I mentioned earlier, these young parts of me that were like, I love her, but man, she put us through hell. So we're gonna put her through hell. Like that's a very teen me. Like that's rageful, that's angry, that says I hate the world. And I didn't ask to be born into this world, so fuck everyone. That was a very young version of me. So I had to really learn how to reparent that part of me and teach it how to relate to the world, how to relate to its responsibilities.
Wow, that's a really cool technique. I like the 3, 2, 1 um, practice that you talked about there. I'm actually going to use that. It sounds, yeah, it's actually I really like that. How you put that into a practical sense. It also sounds similar to sort of internal family systems, where you look at the different parts of yourself and then you have a conversation with the parts of yourself. Because something I've been noticing lately is the importance on feeling feelings. But I think like if you were to say to someone who's going through something, oh, you just need to feel the feeling fully, a lot of the time it's like, how? Like what do I do? I just sit there and feel like how do I do that? And I think what you talked about there is practices and exercises to allow that to almost take over your body and be present, have conversations with it, feel it, understand it, and that's how to really move it. So yeah, that's really powerful. I had a similar experience with my life. I remember my rock bottom was similar. Like I'd lost thousands of dollars in crypto. My car broke down. My partner just broke up with me. It's like all this stuff on one day. And I remember I saw a mentor of mine and they kind of outlined to me. I can't really remember how, but I remember realizing, oh, hang on. When all this stuff happens, what do? I go to my mom. I go to a close girlfriend of mine, and I whine, and they say, man, God, that must be really hard, and they give me a lot of attention. They give me love, and so I was getting off on these hard situations. Like when my car broke down, it was actually good because I would go and cry to mummy in a sense, like go and get this love. So yeah, it's a really powerful what you've talked about there. Um, so moving on to a little bit later in your journey when you went over to Mexico, and I guess that's when this new business or this passion projects that you're working on today were born. What Yeah, like how did you gain the insight? I guess what I'm asking is how did you gain the insights that you teach today? Because you can't really go to university for relationships or masculine feminine polarity. I guess through experience, and I also heard in your story you spent a lot of time in isolation. So yeah, do you want to speak about how you gained or you came to find the insights that you teach today?
So, two things that really impact the insights that I share and really where they're sourced from. One primary one is my relationship to spirituality and the divine. So, for a long time, I felt that relationships weren't really important, like things that I shouldn't be investing my time into. And, even told myself one more heartbreak and I'm gonna become a monk. Like I'm just gonna move to the mountains and go to Tibet and like, some of my friends used to call me Aang, like Aang the last avatar. So it's like a whole identity that I bought into. And it's like, maybe that's what I'm destined to do. So coming back now into my body and really relating to these experiences differently and understanding the importance of relationships, one of the important relationships that I made sure to cultivate on my path was my relationship to the divine. And that was important for me because my family was very, very religious, and to an extent where my parents were very conservative, and there's a lot of religious trauma around what I should be doing, who I should be become, and how to protect myself from eternal damnation, essentially. And so these experiences really affected my self-worth. They affected like who I thought I should be and who I am in the world. And so there's a part of my journey where I was very, very uh, determined to figure out who is God and how can I form a relationship with this entity in a way that makes sense for me, in a way that feels genuine for me, in a way that allows me to feel like I'm a good human being and I'm loved and I'm supported and I'm cared for and provided for, all of those things. So a big source of that is really just the insights that I've gained in this pursuit to connecting to the divine, to essentially establishing an intimacy with God. And in that relationship, I found that that relationship is very similar to all of my human relationships.
Mm.
And the things that I fear in this relationship with the divine, if I feel that there's blame or shame when I'm connecting to the divine, it means that I harbor that same blame and shame in my own heart. And if I feel distant from the divine, all of these things are trickling down into the way that I view myself and the way I view all relationships. So, what I had discovered was my relationship to divine supersedes all relationships. So if I feel unworthy of this eternal being's love, guidance, support, and provision, then there's no doubt I'm going to feel unworthy of love from a friend,
Mm.
a compliment from my partner, a high paying salary from an employer. There's no doubt I'm going to feel unworthy of it because this being, this essence, this force that created me, I don't even feel worthy of its love and provision. So I realized for me, I need to essentially train my body to feel into that intimacy and to be able to receive and connect to that love. So that informs a lot of my insights. And the second thing is I really, really longed for a stable, grounded, strong father figure throughout my childhood. And I just didn't have that. But what I did was I sourced this father figure throughout different forms of media. So I
Mm.
used to watch Boy Meets World as a young boy, Saved by the Bell. I was watching all of these shows to kind of essentially create my own father figure, my own hero in a way. And I would grab different qualities and traits that I would watch in movies. I was a big Spider-Man guy,
Mm.
so
Me
Uncle
too.
Ben was. I was like, oh man, I love that. Oh, I wish I heard my dad say something like that to me. So I
Mm.
was just grabbing all these images of what I felt was uh the 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 honorable father, the noble father, the good father. And from that, I was essentially training my body to relate to these attributes, to relate to these qualities, though I felt they lacked in my external life. And so now what's happened is the things that I'm sharing are essentially just so happen to impact other people or to support them in their journey, but they're really for me. They're
Mm.
really for that younger me. They're messages that I wish my father shared with me. There are messages, things that I wish my father sat down and taught me about relationships, about love, about commitment, about drive, about dedication, about what it means to be a good father, about what it means to be a leader that leads with compassion and empathy. Like I wasn't taught those things. So people are essentially witnessing me have a conversation with myself. And that's really where the insights are born from, is that longing for those messages, that father figure. And so when I tune into what did I need my father to say to me, or what would I say to my child if I had a son today, that's really the lens in which I'm communicating and where some of these things are coming from outside of the private sessions I have with clients and the questions that are um, prevalent within every conversation I have with someone that reaches out to me or a struggle that someone shares with me.
Hmm. Powerful. I love that. It comes back to a quote from, I think it was Ryan Rose Evans who said it, and he says, "The wounds that you were given are the wounds that you are here to help others heal." And I love that because it's like my pain that I experience and me learning to heal that. When I share that with the world, I help other people heal with it, and it's like I guess that's like the most you can be the most qualified on your own, like you are the most qualified in your own pain. So being able to share that is beautiful. And something I also like the idea of kind of seeking out mentors and um, finding that fatherly figure in other people. Because if you think back to like really tribal days, you know, we had like tribes and we'd have our mother and father, but then we'd also have like all our aunties and all these other grandmother figures and these chiefs, and we would have all these elders that were being passed down to us, which I guess is something we don't really have anymore as such. We don't have that elderly chain. I mean, unless we're close with our grandparents or whatever, but even then, and we'd always have these kind of mentors. Was there that kind of dynamic when you grew up, when you were in the Congo, from up until age 5, or was that not really prevalent there either?
Yeah, so I almost have no memories
Mm.
from my childhood up until the age of 8. But even as I got older, there still wasn't what you're talking about, that sense of elders around me that are sharing with me their wisdom, their lived experiences, and supporting me and understanding my way through the world. I didn't have that even within my family and my extended family. I have an older brother. He did not sit me down and say, "Hey, this is how the way the world works, and this is what I've learned." It really wasn't that. It
Mm.
was more of like an indoctrination process of this is what it means to be a guy. This is what it means to get the girls. This is what it means to, you
Mm.
know, be popular, be cool. Like it was that kind of indoctrination due to
Mm.
his own experience with the lack of those qualities within the men around him as well.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, so a lot of that was lacking in my life. That rites of passage, that sense of initiation of coming into manhood, not from a place of like I'm unconscious and I'm just walking into this stuff and
Mm.
oh shit, like whoa, okay, I'm in it. Like no, I didn't. That's what I had. Like I
Yeah.
didn't have that detailed, curated, guided process of like, hey, you're gonna approach this point in your life. These are some of the challenges you might find. Hey, you're at this age, and these are some things that you are ready to embrace or come into. Like that was almost devoid and absent in my own life. I feel so
Mm.
many men as well, you know.
Yeah, it's something the world lacks a lot today, and it was such a big part of our culture. I mean, before real civilization, it was like that there was these real almost harsh initiations into manhood, right? And that would ultimately prepare you, give you the tools and prepare you for what manhood is. And it was like a clear defining moment. Like I'm a boy, initiation. Now I'm a man. Whereas we kind of just drift into manhood these days, and I think that's partially why we have a bit of a struggle with men. But from my understanding, you've worked with hundreds of men during your time. So I want to talk to you about what you find yourself most commonly working on with these men.
Hmm. Yeah, so what I usually find is like the common archetype or avatar that shows up in our sessions is a man that is struggling to really step into his power, really reclaim his authenticity. And there are a lot of things preventing him from doing that.
Mm.
And at the core of it is often a deep wounding around the relationship with the mother, but also an absence of a strong masculine figure in his life.
Mm-hmm.
So what I find is that shows up as the symptoms of chronic people pleasing, nice guy syndrome, rescuer archetype, saving the damsel from distress, not being able to really embody their fullness, but being afraid to be too much, come off as threatening, afraid to assert themselves in a room or a space or a relationship. So these are the common things that I'm finding, despite the fact that a lot of the people that I work with are in high level positions, from
Mm,
CEOs, consultants, managers, professional athletes, surgeons, doctors, lawyers. Like there's these qualities about themselves that they struggle to integrate into their love life that are completely present within their work life.
mm,
So my work is often about showing them why these things aren't translating, what is happening, what are the differences between this version of them and the version of them that actually shows up when they're relating to a woman or their family or somebody that could possibly trigger some childhood wounds.
mm,
So yeah, these are really the things that I find most common within the men that I
mm.
work with.
Yeah, I can see how that would be common actually. And one of the things was hoping to talk to you today about was that mother wound in men. Um, how we internalize that and I guess repeat that pattern in our relationship. Um, and then I guess the effects that has on women as well. So, um, yeah, if you wouldn't mind going into a bit of that, like what is the mother wound, how does one heal it, and what are the ramifications for women as well. I read a story you did about that not long ago, and it's beautifully outlined. So yeah, I'll leave that to you.
Yeah. Yeah. The mother wound is such an important topic that has been a game changer in my life in terms of like working with it. And I feel it's a lifelong commitment to healing it. So how I define the mother wound is the relationship that I have with myself that was created by the relationship that I had with my mother.
Mm,
So the relationship that I had with my mother, there are a series of strategies, defense mechanisms, trauma responses that I developed as a way to feel safe within that connection with my mother, as a way to not compromise my connection with her. There are things that I would call formulas of safety that a child develops very early to maintain that sense of mother loves me, mother cares about me, and mother approves of me. So these defense strategies, these formulas of safety are then the things that we struggle with as adults that we might call self-sabotaging tendencies, chronic people-pleasing tendencies, or maybe things that shape our low self-esteem. So working and healing the mother wound is really about getting brutally honest, but also being deeply gentle and compassionate towards ourselves by walking these younger parts of us into the heart of what has transpired within our relationship with my mother, with our mother. How do we truly feel about her? And so this is a very difficult space to explore, oftentimes because it's seen as a avenue of blame. So if I start sharing about what I felt towards my mother, I'm blaming her. So a lot
mm,
of people will have a deep attachment to their mother, don't want to go that route because there's like I don't want to blame her. She did so much for me. She sacrificed all of these things. And so culturally it's also taboo because mothers are often the most unappreciated but also the most glorified. So it's this weird taboo where it's like you can't talk about them, you can't tell them, you can't say she did this wrong and didn't show up for you. And at
mm.
the same time, mothers are so unappreciated and unsupported culturally and systemically. So it's like very awkward when you're approaching this work. You're like, what? How do I go about this?
Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah.
Right. Right. So because it's taboo within the culture, when you start to confront the mother wound and you even think about sharing it with others, that also becomes another layer of resistance because most people don't confront those feelings. So when someone else is coming to them, hey man, I'm dealing with this resentment towards my mother and I'm trying to heal this, those people might look at you like, why would you do that? And so you have all of these blanket statements that come up like, you only have one mother. Your mother sacrificed all of this for you. Your mother carried you in her womb for 9 months. You only, your mother isn't going to be around on earth for long, so cherish her while you have her. These are all cultural statements that are literally preventing us all collectively from addressing something very real that has to be confronted, that has to be healed, that has to be mended. So when we break through those cultural statements that are literally here just to keep us boxed in, keep us going from going outside of our comfort zone. And so when we put those voices down, or we kind of create some parameters or boundaries with those voices, maybe they're internally or maybe they're outside of us, we take the time to acknowledge, like, what did I need in the relationship with my mother? Is a powerful question,
Mm.
right? So we might find I needed connection, I needed encouragement. Maybe mother didn't really encourage me. She only outlined the things that I wasn't doing well, right? Maybe I needed protection. Some of us have grown up with very abusive fathers, but there's a part of us that looks at the mother and says, why aren't you protecting me from him? Why
Mm.
aren't you divorcing him so we can be in a better situation? It is a very childlike mind that is assuming these things, but doesn't understand the complexities of relationships and life.
Mm.
But it internalizes that disappointment. Mom didn't protect me from father. She didn't stand up for me. She didn't divorce him and get us into a better situation. So I wish she would have protected me. Right.
Right. And then
So
also because it's a childlike mind who's thinking that, so when we realize when we have the feeling come up of, oh, I wanted protection from my mum, then we intellectualize it as an adult and go, but that's not fair for me to say because she did everything she could. But it's
exactly.
still the belief that the child had because it's a childlike mind. So then we don't want to. I see what you're saying now. We don't want to address it because our older self. Yeah, powerful.
Exactly. We're addressing it from the place of the adult self, which again can compute the complexities of relationships and the nuances of life. But
Mm.
that younger version of us, that is essentially what I call a genuine victim, we have to validate the genuine experience of being a victim. That me is a teen me, is a young me that on some level literally didn't ask to be born into this world. My parents chose to have me, right? So that part of me is rightfully so in their statement of, I don't deserve this shit. I didn't ask for this. This isn't what I wanted. This was forced and imposed upon me. So we can't turn to that younger version of us and be like, no, no, no. You see, like everything happens for a reason. You chose this experience. You chose your parents. It's like that's essentially emotional gaslighting for that younger part of us.
Mm.
And so we do this often when we've developed these toolkits of understanding emotions, understanding trauma, but instead of using them to really help our inner children feel truly safe and seen, we use it to essentially try to get rid of the negative emotions associated with these bad experiences that they had. Because we can't hold that discomfort in our bodies. It's
Mm.
not an issue with the emotions or what they're feeling, it's we don't know how to hold it. I don't know how to hold the grief of my childhood. I don't know how to hold the wrath and anger I feel towards my mother that I have never addressed because I pedestaled her or I believed that she was the perfect parent. I don't know how to address the sadness that I feel when I acknowledge that I didn't have the best childhood, right? When that lens comes off, we have to sit with those feelings. So it's a bottom up, top down approach. So the feelings come up, they surface inside of my body. I feel angry, I feel upset. This is the process of doing the work with the mother wound is I start to create space to acknowledge these feelings and they come up. But the top down approach is now this adult mind that I have that we would call the adult self. And the adult self is really just it's a metaphor for the prefrontal cortex. So this part of ourselves that's making the decision making process, and the amygdala, which is responsible for the survival strategies, is what we call the inner child. So it's really just a part of my brain connecting these circuits to start to notice things from a higher perspective or a higher resolution. But I'm not using that to gaslight my younger self. I'm using it to learn how to hold the truth of their experience.
Mm.
So as those feelings are surfacing, what's coming down is that part of me that is an adult now that understands that this experience is very valid. My anger is valid. My emotions are valid. How can I create safety for this to be felt and possibly released?
Mm.
So that is that process. And so the other piece of it is noticing what's called the mother gap. So the mother gap is where I needed, what love I needed versus the love that my mother gave me. So that there's a gap. What I needed to feel safe, empowered, brilliant, smart, respected, a good child, versus what my mother could actually give me.
Mm.
When I notice that, I find a gap. That gap is not for my mother to fill. That gap is for me to fill as an adult now, because now I understand my responsibility to this inner child. That encouragement you lacked, well, I need to be a very encouraging parent to this inner child. That, space that I needed to make mistakes free of shame and blame, well, I need to get better at doing that with myself. So that is the process that actually allows us to heal the mother wound, which
Mm.
is really the relationship with ourselves that we created as a result of that relationship with the mother. So
Wow, that's
that's really how I've walked through the process and walked others through it.
yeah, that's powerful. I love that and very, very well articulated. So, how would this sometimes turn into uh, relationship wounding, or and how would this play out in a relationship? Would it be that we start seeking validation from our partner and trying to get that gap that you just explained met with our partner?
Right, right, completely, completely.
Mm.
So we outsource the work of filling that gap with our own self-love by placing that responsibility on the partner. So this manifests in a bunch of different ways. So if my mother didn't give me encouragement, maybe she was emotionally unavailable, what happens is I attract an emotionally unavailable partner that also doesn't encourage me. So then I'm constantly turning to her for that encouragement. But in that relationship, I'm maybe almost always being nitpicked, judged, shamed. Uh, I feel like I have to be perfect for this partner. I feel like nothing I do for her is good enough.
Mm.
What I've just did is just recreate the relationship with my mother all over again. So those dynamics that we find ourselves in with our mother, we then just recreate at an attempt to feel the things that our mother didn't give us. But the only reason those experiences are being recreated is because we're avoiding a very vital process of healing, which is I can't outsource this to this person. I can't outsource the work of learning to love myself unconditionally onto my partner. Because if I do, that is how I turn her into my mother figure.
Mm.
That is how that's how she becomes my mother figure.
Which is a
Because
common
I
experience
project
today,
that,
isn't
which is a common experience,
it? Yeah.
right? So that's why that process of learning what these things are and then taking responsibility for myself and saying, this is my shit. And when I understand what things are mine versus what things are happening in the relationship that are supposed to be mended with the other person that I'm with, that allows me to know how to navigate these emotions because there are going to be times where there are things happening in the relationship that are literally happening in the relationship, right? And there will be things that are happening in the relationship that are just things that I'm projecting from my unhealed past.
Mm.
So if I want to be discerning in those moments and understand which is which, right? To be able to separate the two, I have to look at what is coloring my ability to see the present moment clearly. And it's often this past relationship. So we choose these partners that really mirror our mothers, but also in a way mirror our fathers as well. So there's a both of the mother and father wounds are interpenetrating each other. So if my mother was submissive, and my father was very aggressive and dominant, if I, which is a very subtle thing that I found really powerful in my own personal journey and others that I'm walking and guiding through this process, whoever I identified with becomes the role that I play as an adult. So, example, if my father was the aggressive, dominating, abusive one, I identified him as the bad one. And I identified my mother, who was the victim, the submissive wife, as the good person, the
Mm.
one that was victimized. This is a binary state of thinking, like we talked about earlier. It's just childlike mind. Doesn't understand nuances, doesn't understand the complexities of relationships. But I don't realize that the part of me that internalized that my mom was the good one later on idolizes those qualities about the mother then. So if she was submissive, she didn't say anything, she had had no boundaries. I idolized this part of her. And those parts of my father that was aggressive, that was assertive, that was dominant, I demonized them. Unknowingly, that means I've rejected those parts of me as well. So that means in my relationships, what's going to happen? I'm going to be the submissive person that is a doormat and just lets people say whatever they want to me. And what's
Mm.
happening is my partner is then going to be the embodiment of the things that I rejected in myself, but also demonized in my father. So it can be the other way around. The father can be the submissive one, and the mother can be the very overpowering one. So that's where I feel like the nuance is that these wounds are just they play on each other. So they
Mm.
can manifest in very different and subtle ways.
Yeah, powerful. There's I've been learning so much about the how the impact of our mother and father towards us, and then watching their relationship is like, well, it really it determines a lot between your romantic relationships. And not that they're in control of that. Like you have the ability to heal and choose what reality you want. But it is interesting at how much you recreate that experience. Like I definitely recreated that experience in my lifetime, and even now I find that I've picked a partner who definitely mirrors that back. And but because I did the work a lot on myself before, I'm able to bring that into the relationship, and we're able to go deeper into that because every time she reflects that back to me, I see it, and we can talk about it, and it's like it's like healing times tenfold sometimes when you get in a relationship and you're able to heal that together.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Hell yeah.
So if we were to move a little bit onto relationships now, you speak a lot about masculine energy and feminine energy. I want to know what most people get confused about when it comes to this topic because it's quite a big topic. It's quite a hot topic at the moment. So yeah.
Yeah. So what I find that people get confused is they first they associate the masculine energy with male
Mm.
and feminine energy with female, which makes it very hard when you're talking about energies and someone is saying, wait, you're talking about men, or you're talking about feminine energy, or you're talking about women,
Mm.
which completely makes having these conversations and talking about the integration process and how to balance these energies very difficult. Because if I see the image of a man when I'm talking about masculine energy, then that's not going to help me really receive or support my partner, who might be a woman, in cultivating some of those qualities that might make her a more full and empowered human being, right? And so if I'm a guy and the image that my partner has of feminine energy is a woman, and I need to learn how to connect to my own feminine energy, and in that process, she sees the image of a woman, that might not create a safe space for me to learn how to mend and heal and connect to my feminine energy. And so this is the same thing in solitude. If I'm a guy learning how to connect to my feminine energy, but I know feminine energy as that means woman, I'm going to reject that whole process altogether, right? Because of course, I want to be a man. So that is like the biggest confusion that I find is that people assume that these energies are male and female, they're genders, rather than literally energies that we are describing to we're using as concepts to describe a very profound and multifaceted human experience of relating to ourselves. So masculine energy, I often share as a, we could see it as a spirit associated by certain attributes and qualities and traits. So those attributes, qualities, and traits can be embodied by all individuals and all living beings. Meaning, I can see a horse and I can be like, that is embodying some very strong masculine energy. I can see a cat and say that cat is embodying some very strong masculine energy. And we know this when we look at a German Shepherd. A German Shepherd is a very masculine dog,
Mm.
but you can see a German Shepherd that is a female breed of a German Shepherd and be like, there's something very masculine about this dog.
Mm.
And so it helps us relate to this when we kind of look at the external world beyond centering humans and understand that these are simply energies that are associated by a certain set of qualities. And that can be determination for masculine energy, action, system, structure, um, groundedness, a planning, assertiveness. We can see it through through this lens. And when we think about feminine energy, we think about unity. We think about presence. We think about love, connection, compassion, that nurturing mother energy that we feel maybe from life or the earth. And so this helps us see that all of these energies are important for all human beings to cultivate and to nurture them, right?
Mm.
Because if I'm only nurturing this one side of myself, because I think that's what makes me a man, then I'm completely devoid and like missing out on a whole other experience with myself and a much richer relationship with myself and the people around me. And they're
Mm.
going to feel that disconnection, right? They're going to feel that disconnection.
What would that look like? A guy who's like, I want to become a man. Like, I want to be this masculine figure. You know, they get the warrior, the Spartan kind of. And I want to make lots of money, and I want to be like, I want to have a really feminine woman. And he goes, so I'm just going to work on my masculinity. You know, I'm going to work on my determination, my motivation, my aggressiveness, my boundaries, my firmness. And then I'm going to only focus on that. So I'm going to neglect the feminine side because that's for my partner. What does that in turn look like for him?
Yeah, so that's going to look like a relationship that is very harmful to the people around him
Hmm.
because the feminine allows us to connect to all of life. So the feminine energy is an energy that cherishes life. It feels the essence of life. So when you think about not being able to feel, right? That is that energy that allows us to feel, to notice the intimacy between two people and to connect to that. As a man, if I'm not harnessing this aspect of myself that can feel into my emotional body, but feel into the people around me, and also feel into like the nature of my experience, I'm going to be very not only disconnected from myself, but I'm going to have a hard time feeling the pain that I cause others when I'm
Hmm.
aggressive, when I'm overly dominant in the situation, when I'm overpowering somebody, when I'm disconnected from my body. I don't feel what that does to me. Therefore, I can't feel what that does to other people. So it makes for a very difficult life if we want our lives to be fulfilling, if we want our relationships to be meaningful. And that also enables me to box people in, which you have something you shared, which is like, I only want my partner then to be one thing
Hmm.
because I'm disconnecting from an aspect of my own humanity, right? I have to erase a part of my humanity. I have to essentially mutilate this part of me to disconnect it from it entirely. But if that's the relationship I establish with myself, then I'm going to require other people to do the same thing naturally.
Hmm.
So forfeit those parts of you as well that I claim only I can embody, only I can demonstrate. You can't embody anything like that because that's going to jeopardize the relationship I have with myself. So I think it just makes
Yeah.
for like very superficial, like shallow and like non deep meaningful connections.
That makes a lot of sense. And I guess that's also like when the codependency of this polarity comes into it. It's like I'm only masculine, so then all feminine traits I need you for, which is like the codependent, right? Um,
Yes, yes.
so how does it look when it's in I don't use the word healthy, but yeah, I guess healthy. Like, what's a healthy version of a masculine and feminine embodiment in a relationship? Like how does a man, play out the man roles, I guess you could say, and the woman play out the woman roles, but in a healthy way where they're both integrated humans as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think from my experience and what I've seen is a man can embody and demonstrate those qualities. Oftentimes, women really need men to embody and demonstrate those qualities of provision, protection. Hey, don't worry, I got it. I'll take care of it. Like
Mm.
those problem solving qualities about the masculine, women really love and adore those qualities. And when that's not happening, again, from the experience that I've had of working with this series of women who are in those situations where a man is disconnected from those parts of himself, it makes their life very difficult. It makes it very difficult to feel attracted to that man. It makes it very difficult to feel led and connected in that relationship. So I think those qualities are important for men to have and to bring into the relationship because that's the way women, I would say most women, I'm not going to generalize, but say most women receive masculine love and care, right? It's
Mm,
through these channels. And so for men, the way we receive feminine love and care is through a set of channels. Like that provision might look like a warm cooked meal. It might look like a massage after a long day of work. It might look like she just made my favorite coffee after I, just came back home from a 10-hour shift. Like
mm,
these are just ways that men, most men, receive love, right? And
mm,
so in a what I would call a healthy connection is that two people are attuned to the ways the other person likes to receive love. And so that might look different from every other person, right? And so what I think makes it healthy is flexibility. So flexibility is the game changer and the things that I see lacking when we look into binary gender roles is that these things are fixed. They're
mm,
fixed. So that means if a man stops providing at any point, let's say I had a client that, he tore his Achilles. So he was out of work for a while. Like he literally couldn't work. So there has to be flexibility because his partner might need to step up in different ways. She might need to support him. She might need to drive him to school or drive him to work or whatever it might be. But imagine a man in that relationship where his body is literally incapable of providing anymore for the family and he's divorced immediately. I can't be in this relationship with you. You're not the man I thought you were. It's like,
mm,
what do you mean? Like life is happening to me. Like
mm,
life is just happening. So there's no flexibility to say, hey, life is presenting us with an opportunity to be flexible, to course correct, to maybe shift our dynamic in a way that makes sense for what it is now. So I think that's what makes these dynamics rigid and feel like boxes is when there's
yeah,
no flexibility, right? Which might look like for a man, like my partner has something to say about this. She has some feedback she wants to bring me. I need to be receptive to that because in that role, she might enter into, let's say, a masculine energy,
mm,
but I need to be flexible and be able to receive my partner's feedback and insight, right? That's good leadership. So there's a fluidity between these energies, but it's really shaped by my flexibility, even though primarily I'm in the relationship and I'm embodying a very strong masculine energy. And then primarily my partner is embodying a very strong feminine energy.
mm.
I think there has to be a prominent energy from either one, but there also has to be an openness and flexibility to shift and adapt when life presents those opportunities.
Yeah, that's powerful. It's a big one because I remember when I first started my relationship, me and my partner were very aware of our wounding and our dynamics, and we wanted to work on me being the masculine role and her being the feminine pole, and then I found that we would get hung up on I got hung up on different details. Like I'd be like, wait, but if she does that, that means she's being masculine, and I would get it was a real heady kind of practice. Like I was like, what should I be doing and shouldn't be doing, and then I'd feel guilty if like she was just driving, for example, like so.
Right.
Like I would be like, no, I'm supposed to drive. I'm the man. um,
Right.
but I've really kind of taken a step away from that now to realize. Firstly, I realize it's not actually about what you're doing; it's about how you're being energetically, per se. And then I love the way you just rephrase that to being, how does each party receive love? And usually, women receive love easier through more masculine, I guess, forms of love, and then men receive it through more feminine. Like, yeah, I kind of I love it when I come home. One time I came home and my partner had cooked me my favorite raspberry cake, and it was just like I just felt so loved. So
Yeah.
that's a really really cool topic. Alrighty, so let's start rapid fire round, which the goal is to just answer these questions in under a minute. Obviously, I'm not going to time you, but just like some short bangs to really finish off this conversation. So, one of the things I wanted to ask actually, because this is kind of the field I want to work in, I've seen that you've talked about this before, is why is it that a lot of men end up habitually watching porn?
Mm. So men end up habitually watching porn because they don't have the tools to self-soothe through stress, anxiety, and overwhelm. So porn is an outlet to soothe through those big challenging emotions. And men aren't raised to have the toolkits to heal and regulate their nervous system when they're experiencing stress, anxiety, or fear. So what they've been, or what we've all been essentially indoctrinated or socialized to do, is to sexualize those feelings. So when I feel anger, sadness, big and challenging emotions, I know how to regulate or cope with those feelings through the avenue of sex. So that might lead me to turn to a partner. That might lead me to turn towards sex work. That might lead me to turn towards porn. But this is simply because I've been indoctrinated into a relationship with myself where I only know how to sexualize the things that come up, and I don't have the tools at all as an adult to deal with these feelings without escaping from them with porn and sex. So I
Mm.
think that's why there's a heavy reliance on porn. And for any man listening, tune into what triggers your desire to use porn.
Mm.
9 times out of 10, it is not due to horniness, like raging horniness. It's often due to an overwhelming experience you had, or you're stressed out, you're bored, you don't know what to do with yourself. Like it's either one of those.
Mm.
Rarely, rarely, it's like she's not here. I'm feeling it. There's a fire in me right now, and I have to watch this. Very often, it's not that.
Yeah, so true. Very true. I remember back when I was using porn a lot, I would use it when I come home from work and before I go to sleep. So, and then also if I had a day off and I was at home doing nothing, like a lot, I'd use it a lot then, and it's that boredom. And so, I think that's a really you've outlined a really crucial part to understanding this that habit. Thank you.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, of course.
What can someone do about that actually? Like, how can we find a more healthy outlet, and doesn't just have to be for porn, even just all addiction. um, how can someone look to healing that part of themselves?
So they have to develop activities, 3 different activities. These activities are for when I'm bored, when I'm horny, and when I'm stressed, overwhelmed, or afraid. So, what do I do in these given moments? Because based on my relationship with my nervous system, porn, sex, alcohol, drugs, going out, those are my outlets. But I need to develop activities when I hit each of these points because I will. I will get bored. I will have a whole day to myself, and I just been doom scrolling for 5 hours. I have to have activities that actually essentially support and nurture my emotional health, my mental health, and my spiritual health. So, what are those activities? I need to find what these are. When I feel bored, what do I need to do immediately? So, for me, I've developed a certain set of activities for each of these. when I'm bored, I literally force myself to do a workout. So I'm like, oh, you're bored? Perfect time to work out. So let's go to the gym. So I'll set an alarm and say, hey, I'm bored. Let's get in the gym. And usually it gets the energy moving, especially that energy that I would probably expel through watching porn. Um, when I'm stressed, I have a different set of tools that I or activities. Some are relying on male friends to talk about what's happening with the stress, journaling, meditation, and also walks in nature are a big one.
Mm.
And when I'm horny, when I'm actually feeling like, oh, it's time to go. Let's get at it. Where is she? It's learning how to really relate to my own sexual energy. There's this like maxim that I heard online one time, which is stay horny, right? Learning how to actually hold that much energy inside of my body.
Mm.
So for me, it's a self-pleasure practice that I just use to learn how to just connect to my body. Again, I don't do it every time, but it's how can I be intentional in cultivating this energy, seeing
Mm.
it as a life force inside of me, not something for me to waste or to spill. So that intention behind it, really I found really helpful, game changer.
Mm.
So that's what I would share.
Mm. Awesome. What are three qualities a man should cultivate for a successful relationship?
For a successful relationship,
Mm.
the ability to lead. So that means the capacity to take charge, take initiative, to make decisions, to really take charge of a moment when he's needed, when he needs to step up, whether that's a difficult conversation, or that's planning a date, or that's pursuing his woman to their old and gray.
Mm.
That I think is important. Leadership. The second thing is responsibility. So I think it's a quality, being responsible, being open to taking on responsibility, because a man matures based on his capacity to hold the weight of responsibility. And you know the immaturity of a man based on how he avoids responsibility. So a man is enriched, is essentially empowered by the weight of responsibility.
Mm.
It has its shadow because it is the very burdens that cause us stress, anxiety, fear, worry, all of those things, but it also empowers us. So having the responsibility to look at the responsibilities in our lives and to lean into them, to not shy away, but to approach them and knowing that there are what's going to lead us to evolve and to grow as men, as leaders, as providers, as husbands, and possibly fathers. So the third one would be ooh, quality. There's a couple in here.
Mm.
I think the third one, what is wow. There's so many I have for this, but I think the third one would be just the capacity to play. It's a
Mm.
very non-negotiable in my own life, so that's what I would say is the capacity to play. Because a lot of men walk around honestly with a stick up their ass, and it's not their fault. It's the weight of their responsibilities in their life. They're fathers, they're leaders, they're lawyers, or businessmen. But life gets very serious really quickly for men because we have a lot of responsibility on our shoulders. So
Mm.
if we don't know how to play, we don't know how to invite play, we don't know how to make time for play, play doesn't mean me just laughing with my friends or being a little kid or resting on my partner's lap. It means like, what are the activities that enliven my inner child? That might be surfing, that might be martial arts, that might be riding my bike, that might be skateboarding, that might be drawing, that might be photography. But I need activities that allow me to drop out of uh, coach Jeremiah or father or husband or entrepreneur and just be myself. So if a man doesn't have that, I mean, anything that he takes on will feel meaningless, will
Mm.
feel like a drag, will feel like a burden in his life.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that one, because that's something I've been working on the last few months. It's actually been really difficult. I'm surprised how hard it is. Not hard, how much resistance there is to me just having joy. Um, I often outsource that with my partner too. Like I don't know how to have joy with just myself as well. Um, And so like even just little things I'm starting to do, like tomorrow me and my partner are going to a trampoline park and we're just gonna bounce around. I'm like, just to try and get comfortable with that joy. So yeah, I really like those ones. So now the same question for women. What are three qualities that a woman could cultivate for a successful relationship?
Hmm. I would say, ooh, this is interesting. I would say the capacity to receive. So the capacity to receive is important because n- in their love life, men are going to be essentially penetrating. So that's penetrating them with gifts, love, care, attention, affection, provision. There is an act of penetration that's happening in
Mm,
almost every interaction with a very masculine man. And so, an important quality to have is the capacity to receive that
mm,
without constricting, without closing down or shutting down, but really allowing that love, that provision, that his affections, his love, his affirmations to really be received. Um, and that I think leads into my second quality, which is having um, I wouldn't say this is a quality, but in relating to men, I would say a grateful heart.
mm,
So, meaning that men really thrive on gratitude and appreciation. When a man feels loved by his partner, he is very, very generous with his time, his energy, his resources, his affections. He's very generous. And that is a man that is deeply connected and feels loved in that relationship. When a man gets stingy and rigid with his resources, his time, he's like, oh, he's not prioritizing his woman. It's because on some level he doesn't feel loved. He doesn't feel cared for.
mm,
So the man receives love often through gratitude. A woman that acknowledges him, that praises him, that says thank you, that shows appreciation, is a woman that a man will never forget, almost never let go of,
mm,
because it allows him to feel like what I'm pouring into this woman is something that I can feel proud about.
mm,
And I feel seen through her acknowledgement of my efforts and the things that I'm giving her.
mm,
So it's a very underrated thing because most men don't confess how often we need to hear those things from our partners.
mm,
But it's a game changer for any woman that does these things on a consistent basis. Um,
mm,
so the third thing is I would say a quality would really be a deep spiritual connection. Uh, and the reason I say that is because women are often in relationships with men that have to be highly immersed in the material world and the things that they're doing and the things that they're taking care of. So, a woman that can enrich a man's life by adding an element to his experience that he may not be able to connect to on a daily basis, I think enriches her experience, but also helps expand his understanding of the world, and allows him to learn from her experience.
mm,
And I feel like a spiritual connection, whether that's with the earth, whether that's with herself, or whether that's with the divine, I feel supports her love life in a lot of different ways. Um, but makes her a woman that is like no man can forget. So yeah, those would be the three. Those would be the three.
yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Yeah, yeah, cool. How can someone call in a partner if they are currently single?
Someone calling a partner if they're currently single is to make sure that they're ready to receive that partner. So
Mm,
doing the work, this is the best way to call in a partner is to look at those closets that we have where we've thrown all of the things that we don't want to see about ourselves, from the emotional baggage we're still carrying from the last relationship to the resentment we still feel towards the ex or our mother, like clearing out that closet, that bag full of this
mm,
emotional negative experiences that we have not processed. Clearing that out completely makes space for that person because we are making space for the things that we're calling in.
mm,
So it's essentially like if I want a new couch, I have to get rid of the old couch. But most people are calling in a new couch with the same one still sitting in their living room,
Hmm.
and it can't fit. It can't fit. So that person can't come into their life. But even if they do, they look just like the last person
Hmm.
because clear they didn't clear those things out. So that's like what I found is the fastest way to call in like a soul partner, like a dream relationship, is
Hmm.
to take the time to clear those things out. And we all know what they are. Those situationships that went nowhere, but we're still in touch with that person. Those people that we keep around to just fill emotional voids. Like that is the process of clearing those things out.
What do you believe a high value man is today?
High value man, in my definition, is a man that embodies the traits of kindness, compassion, loyalty, and high levels of integrity, and a man that uplifts and empowers everyone around him, his
Hmm.
partner, his community, his tribe, his family. That is someone that I see as a high value man, is someone that is not only is someone that embodies like high levels of virtue, of discipline, of integrity, and everyone around him is inspired by his presence and his leadership as well.
Hmm. Awesome. If you could give one piece of advice when it comes to relationships, what would it be?
Mm. For somebody that's in a relationship right now.
Yeah, yeah.
So what I would share is protect the image of your partner from your shadows, meaning that everything your partner does, whether you assume it's negative, it's positive, it's innocent, or it's malicious, is all shaped by your image of them. If you see them in a good, positive image, this is a person that cares about me, that has my best interests at heart. When they do something that hurts you or upsets you, you go back to that image that you have of them. And that informs what you assume about what they did. But if you protect their image from these shadows, these parts of you that don't feel love is safe, don't feel love is uh, stable enough, or feel love means betrayal. If you protect their image from these parts of you, you are going to have a long, long lasting relationship,
Hmm.
and one where you'll be able to repair through issues, one where you'll be able to have differences and disagreements and still feel connected to the person in front of you.
Hmm. Powerful. Do you believe in soulmates?
So I believe in soulmates. I do. I believe in soulmates in a way that expands beyond romance. I believe my cat is my soulmate. I believe my mother is my soulmate. I believe everyone I've come across that I feel really close to is a soulmate in my life.
Hmm. And final rapid fire question is advice to people who are trying to heal their people pleasing pattern.
Hmm. Is that as you attempt to please everyone around you, you are becoming a stranger to yourself. So being liked, being loved, being appreciated by everyone around you is leading you to lose out on the opportunity of getting to know yourself.
Hmm.
Who are you? What do you like? What do you like to do? What brings you fulfillment? What brings you happiness? Is something that you need to be asking yourself, not what is going to make this person happy? How can I keep them in my life? How can I maintain this connection? But actually getting curious about what is it that brings you happiness? What do you need to feel connected in a relationship? What do you need to feel supported in a relationship? What are your needs? Taking time to get curious about that and not spending so much time on hyper analyzing what other people need from you and how you can be pleasant and loved in their eyes
Hmm.
is what I would share.
Amazing. And then we have a closing tradition on this podcast where I ask the guest if you could provide one practical tool that would have a positive impact on society and individuals, what would it be?
One practical tool.
Mm.
So that practical tool would be it's a practical tool that's already there, but it is connecting to the earth through the technology of prayer, through the technology of meditation, through the technology of offerings and altars. This is
Mm.
a tool that is already available to people, but it's something that I would say would elevate our quality of life as a species, because a lot of the things that we experience are from a lack of connection to the earth. We've lost our connection to the earth and are spiraling into a lot of painful experiences in a very dark future due to that disconnection.
Mm.
And we are using technology as a replacement to our connection to the earth due
Mm.
to that lack of connection. So, going back to the ancient principles, the ancient tools, the ancient technologies that have been here for thousands and thousands of years, uh, to enable us to come back into right relationship with the earth, I think is what I would share.
Powerful, powerful. Well, thank you so much, Jeremiah. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. If people want to find more about what you're doing today and your socials, do you want to let us know where we can find all that?
Yeah, so Instagram, Twitter, TikTok is going to be under the username by Ermias. So that's Byermeas. And there you can find out about anything that I have upcoming, any classes, any workshops, master classes that I put together, and announcements that I share. Any of the aspects of my journey as well as my teachings will all be directed through these channels. So, yeah, so everyone can find me.
Amazing. I'll put that in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your amazing insights, Jeremiah. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Ah, man, thank you so much for having me, Carter. This is a great conversation, brother.
Thank you. Thank you.